Is it just me, or does it feel like there's been way more scammers these days? Have you also been getting added to random nameless text chains asking you to send over personal information, or getting sent too good to be true offers for jobs you're almost sure you didn't apply for? Yeah, there has to be more of those bastards for sure. But don't just take it from me. According to recent FTC reports, losses from scams had increased 30% just last year in 2022. But the most troubling part about this whole thing is it's almost impossible for you to recover losses once you've been scammed. And scammers will do nothing if not come up with new creative ways to make their schemes feel real enough to where you don't start asking questions until it's too late. Gone are the days of generous Nigerian princes who can't wait to share their endless fortune. In this video, we'll be diving into a scam you won't see reported by the FTC. In fact, you might have never even heard of it. But trust me, you're gonna wanna know about this one. I'll be using the 2020 comedy thriller I Care a Lot to make sense, or nonsense really, out of the infamous Guardianship Swindles. Written and directed by Jake Blakeson, I Care a Lot follows one Marla Grayson, a court-appointed guardian who will stop at nothing until she's dug her claws into the pocketbooks and pension funds of your lowly grandpapas and mimas and whatever else you people call your favorite septuagenarians these days. Before long, we learned that Marla helms a bureaucratic conspiracy where doctors, guardians, assisted living facility managers, and potentially even judges collude to trap elderly and otherwise disabled wards of the court, as they're called, into an ironclad guardianship. Now normally, a guardian is meant to oversee and protect the well-being of a person and their property when said person isn't able to do so for themselves. So because of that, a guardian assumes full control over a ward's assets and their estate until the ward is presumed to once again be self-sufficient. The only problem, and I use only very loosely here, is that once you're a ward of the court and you have a guardian, escaping that guardianship becomes as impossible as her situation.
Started coming after me and starts beating the passenger side of my truck.
Moments after this, the film says she was denied access to visit her kids. Jamie Spears, her father, was given legal control over his daughter's personal, professional, and financial affairs in 2008 after she suffered a mental breakdown and had 2 hospitalizations.
So conservatorships are usually given to people who are elderly, who cannot make the fundamental decisions of either their estate or person. So first of all, the age of the conservator, that being Britney Spears, was a little peculiar. And then also the age of the conservatorship itself, how long it lasted. Conservatorships usually are just for a couple of years at best.
And at least she had the Free Britney movement on her side, and still, it took her 13 years to escape her conservatorship, which for the intents and purposes of this video are one and the same. As in the case with Britney, once you're appointed a guardian, they can do just about whatever they want with your assets. Yeah, it's as f***ing mental as it sounds, 100%. The story of I Care a Lot really kicks off when Marla, who apparently doesn't give a damn about her lungs by the way, when Marla gets presented the case file of Miss Jennifer Peterson, by Miss Peterson's doctor, Karen Amos, one of Marla's co-conspirators. Yeah, it gets worse. Doctors like Karen Amos intentionally pawn off patients that they might have some grievance with to guardians like Marla to be milked for everything they've got. Talk about major HIPAA violations, like somebody call somebody. First, a doctor appears before a judge. There, they get to argue why they believe a person requires the assistance of a guardian. And trust, they can exaggerate their patient files as much as they need to prove their case. If you have a bit of anxiety, they can just say you're schizophrenic. If you have some unresolved anger issues, you're actually bipolar and you refuse to take your meds. After all this negative window dressing, a willing and honestly willfully ignorant judge will just decide to consign a patient over to a guardian just like her. Once appointed by the courts, Marla locks her new wards into assisted living facilities. Inside these care homes, Marla has complete control over what her wards eat, the meds they take, who can visit them. Meanwhile, on the outside, she can legally sell off their house, cars, their jewelry, everything, and collect the profits she makes for services rendered as their guardian. Let's do it. Marla and her partner in crime and passion had this entire scheme dialed in until they learned that their newest ward, Miss Peterson, is actually the mother of Russian mafia boss, Roman Lunev. You mess with the moms of a mob boss, and that's your ass, right? Not so fast. Lannister, Lunev, and his men eventually get outsmarted by Marla, which in researching this film appears to be one of the more common critiques. How can this regular person outwit a bunch of mobsters? Yeah, right. I'll let you watch the movie to see how it all shakes out. But I think the exaggerated unfolding of Marla outmaneuvering Lunev highlighted one major asset she had in her favor. You see, in the film, Lunev was trying to stay clear of the cops to protect his fake identity. So much so that even when his mother was able to escape the care home during an attempted breakout and was only steps away from him and her freedom, as the police arrived on the scene, Lunev had to let her get captured so as to avoid any run-ins with the cops and potentially compromising his operation. And even if he could just, say, send someone, like a greasy lawyer, to confront Marla and threaten legal action, he would find this equally fruitless as a breakout attempt because of one inconvenient technicality. All of Marla's schemes were actually sanctioned by the court. Everything she did was technically legal.
And all you have to do is see how this system works, and you realize that crazy's the norm. Where else can you go in which a perfect stranger can take over your life without you even knowing about it? Where else can you do that? That's the way it is in the state of Nevada.
The impetus for I Care a Lot was a series of news reports which were detailed well in a 2017 New Yorker article, How the Elderly Lose Their Rights. The article zoomed in on the state of Nevada, which is well known for having a large senior citizen population. Aviv highlights some of the major players in the Clark County guardianship racket, one of whom I Care a Lot is likely based on. We'll talk about her in just a second. The article is experienced through the eyes of the victims of these rackets, namely the North family, or more specifically, Rudy and Rennie North. On the Friday before Labor Day 2013, the Norths heard a knock on their front door.
There was a woman in a beige dress with black boots on, and there was a gentleman with her.
What did April say when she showed up at your door?
First thing she said is that she was a guardian. I had no idea what that meant. And she said, I'm going to take you and your wife on a vacation, and you'll be there for 2 weeks. And I said, do you have a court order? And she said, yes.
My name is April Parks. I'm with a private professional guardian, and I am a nationally certified guardian here in the local Las Vegas area.
She claimed that Rennie's condition was way worse than it actually was, and essentially she argued that Rudy had lost his marbles completely. You see, she had filed an emergency ex parte petition with the courts, which allowed her to argue all of this bullshit, with the Norths none the wiser.
She gave us 3 choices. The first choice was she'll call the police and have us taken to jail. My wife, by the way, has CLL, chronic leukemia lymphoma. I wasn't going to see her go to jail. Number 2, we could go to a psychiatric ward. And 3, we could go to an assisted living facility. I chose that because it seemed like that was the least bothersome for my wife.
I said, I'm not leaving my house. And she says, you have to, or we're gonna call the police.
Completely flustered and frightened at the prospect of having their neighbors see them get dragged from their homes by the cops, they complied. And just like that, the Norths were under the temporary guardianship of April Parks. Now, she could bill them for every single hour she spent on their case. You know, the one that she forced them into in the first place? Yeah, that one. See, people like her deserve to get her honestly, I just square up. And the court gave her carte blanche to bill for any little thing her dirty little heart desired. Still, the Norts had one saving grace left: their daughter.
When April Parks took my parents, something clicked in me, and I saw her in an orange jumpsuit, and I said, there's no way I'll ever back down. And I started filing petitions, objections like crazy. I was like a nut.
You find your parents in this assisted living facility, and they're overly medicated. What did you think was going on?
I didn't have it quite figured out, but I knew something was terribly wrong, horribly wrong. We got in the elevator, we went upstairs to see my parents, and we went down the hallway. All of a sudden, this man takes me by my arms like this, and he's like, you have to help me, you have to get me out of here. Please help me. And he's talking to me and my husband and telling me about April Parks. He told me that she took him. It was awful. It was traumatic. I knew very early on in that we were in trouble, that we had to get my parents out of there.
A month after kidnapping Rudy and Rennie from their home, Parks won yet another petition, this time to make the guardianship permanent. The commissioner who ruled on this petition, this guy, John Norheim, had conveniently ruled on just about every single guardianship case since 2005, and was recalled saying how much he loved April Parks, how much April Parks was the bestest, and how she was a godsend, yada, yada, yada. You get the idea. The following month, Parks, with her sold all the Nort's assets. Their house, their car. She transferred the $50K that they had in savings into an account with her name on it.
There's a large group of people involved, including local attorneys, family court judges.
When you see guardians using the same medical professionals over and over and over again, pain management specialists, physicians' assistants, to deem people incompetent, the same names coming up case after case and coming into people's lives, how could there not be some kind of arrangement there?
There are relationships made between the doctors, the lawyers, the private guardian industry, and the court. It's a relationship. Everyone gets theirs, and it's done with the approval of the court system.
As Julie tried to go to the police to report this ridiculous situation that her parents are in, the police kept telling her that it wasn't a police matter. It wasn't a concern of theirs. She tried to go into the courts, but she was dismissed there as well. They even threatened to arrest her. After exhausting all her options, she decided to play the last card in her hand. She contacted Ronna Goodman, a journalist and political editor at the Las Vegas Review-Journal, who at the time had already been looking into similar cases of guardianship malpractice in the state.
Justice for me in this situation would be for the whole ring to go down. These people are going behind bars, and I want to be the person to turn the key and tell them, there you go. This is your new home. Enjoy it.
2 months later, Ronna's newspaper published Clark County's private guardians may protect or just steal and abuse. After the Las Vegas Review-Journal released this reporting, and after the public started getting wind of all this nonsense that was happening, and after journalists started packing the courtrooms during these hearings, the Norts were finally allowed back in court with proper representation this time. All of a sudden, Norheim decided he actually had a backbone. Parks, who sat there waiting a victory like she had hundreds and hundreds of times before, knew this was it. She knew that shit was over. The jig was up. She texted her husband and said, I am finished.
No tears, just a smile today, right?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Steve Wolfson. I'm the Clark County District Attorney. We indicted April Parks and 3 others. This indictment includes more than 130 victims. I was just informed that 2 of the defendants are in custody, April Parks and Mr. Taylor, have been arrested.
And new at 6, what started with a Contact 13 investigation has led to hundreds of felony charges.
I do it because I love it.
April Lynn Parks, her husband Gary Taylor, her attorney Noelle Palmer Simpson, and her office manager Mark Simmons are together facing 270 felony counts of perjury, racketeering, filing false records, theft, and exploitation.
We did it.
Oh my God.
Yes. An unsettling discovery inside a Henderson storage unit.
I discovered an urn, and I thought, oh my God, this is somebody's loved one.
The disturbing discoveries didn't stop there.
I found a tub full of remains, and then a second tub full of remains. I was just shocked. Almost 30 sets of remains. Somebody had the gall to store a family member in a storage unit like that.
That somebody was this woman, April Parks. She's behind bars. This indictment includes dozens of victims, including names that were on urns found inside the storage unit.
Parks was exposed by the people who worked for her. She would go to doctors with blank certificates and choose what defects to tag her patients with so she could swoop in and add them to her roster. Plus, she would visit hospitals and law offices so she could build relationships that would generate new client leads. And she would partner with assisted living facility managers so she could have full compliance all across the board. April Parks is Marla Grayson. She just wasn't smart enough to get away with it. And there's a whole lot of people just like them, trying to do the same exact thing. Guardianship law was imported to the US colonies from a 1324 English statute, and apparently remains largely unchanged 700 years later. With that, 1.5 million US adults are under the care of family or professional guardians, who control $273 billion in assets. And an important thing to keep in mind is that individual states have full jurisdiction over guardianship law, and none of them seem to be interested in keeping good files of complaints brought against guardians. In most states, case files like these are completely sealed, so you can't really find out what the is going on. Now, why is there so little transparency when just about anyone can become a guardian so long as they've never been convicted of a felony? If I've been lucky enough to outrun the police, but I'm also a crook, I can become a guardian, pretend I'm taking care of someone, and steal all their money, everything they've worked their entire life for? A scary possibility came from a study by Hunter College, which found that in New York State, 1/4 of guardianship petitions actually came from nursing homes and hospitals, many times as a means of collecting on overdue hospital bills. So you mean to tell me that you can't afford your hospital bills, so they're gonna lock you up and try to squeeze it out of you? Yeah, that tracks. Okay, bring in the Medicare for all. American society is a capitalist society. Some may even venture to say corporatist, but what this means is that it operates on a population of laborers, you and me. When we're not able to provide said labor, our residual value is as pawns to, again, make or save someone else some money. It's about the money, stupid. Not you, some other person. You're not stupid, you're great, because you're watching this video. And this isn't just when we're old and gray and our knees don't work like they used to. This applies to anyone with a disability or illness that limits or completely inhibits them from working. This includes children, who are increasingly getting swatted back into the workforce as child labor laws come under attack. And even prisoners, who get used in California to fight massive wildfires for pennies, then upon release, can't find stable housing or any semblance of decent living. The money monsters in American society will use us up, throw us away, and move right on to the next unlucky bastard. And what these guardianship swindles prove is that all of us are in the line of fire. These real-world reports of guardian abuse and court-sanctioned fraud make the film I Care a Lot feel tame. And if you've seen the film, it ain't tame. And I think it's a shame that some people chose to review this film without really digging into the meat and bones of what the film was based on. I think it's way more important to do just that instead of coming up with some half-baked film critique that can be summarized as, the main character wasn't likable enough, so me no likey. That's just elementary. Y'all can do better than that. But let's wrap up in the real world where this actually matters. While activists and people who are actually affected by this corrupt system work to find change on a state level to these guardianship laws, I think it's going to take some real intervention on a federal level to actually see meaningful change. I mean, if the law is able to be stretched so thin that guardians can act in such vile, corrupt ways, I don't see why it can't be stretched in the same way to protect the people that it says it's meant to. Until then, I'll be doing whatever little bit I can to make sure that the forgotten people in this country and their suffering doesn't get whitewashed as a cost of modern democracy. Because that's just f***ing nonsense.